We are meeting on the land of the Turrbal people on this side of the river and Jagera people on the other side of the river, and acknowledge their elders, and also acknowledge that this land has never been ceded. And I'd also like to acknowledge the people of Quandamooka country, where I come from. As always, I want to acknowledge the women's resistance that we form a part of. It's been going since time immemorial, and we will continue until we win. And I'd also like to acknowledge all of you, because you've come out, and Brisbane's the only city, you know, in Australia that does this, comes out openly, so be proud. Thanks for people who've purchased. We're going to have 4 speakers today, and then we'll have the footpath march. We'll go left into George. The march will be led by Chris, carrying one of the flags, so don't surge ahead, let Chris lead. We'll go left into George, right into Adelaide, right into Edward. We'll stop at the top of the mall for some chanting. Then we'll go right into Elizabeth, right into George and back here, and then we'll go to lunch for those of you who want to do that. Our chant leaders are Kaz and Narissa, both of whom have been ill. Thank you for your service today. There are more than 100 flyers. On the one side are the chants, on the other side is information about the sex self-identification law that the Queensland government is committed to passing this year. So let's try and get out as many of those flyers as we can to pedestrians. If you'd like to speak on some aspect of the defence of women's, girls, kids, lesbian and gay rights at our next public rally, which will be in about a month, for 3 to 8 minutes, please see me or send me a direct message on the IWD Brisbane Meanjin page. Please support that page by liking the posts and by looking out for the next event. A month ago, when we met here, we were very happy because FINA had decided to support women's sport for women. Despite the fact that the Queensland Minister for Sport, Sterling Hinchcliffe, had recently said women's sport for women was a right-wing trope. And despite the fact that the Queensland Minister for Beyond Appalled, Di Farmer, had said she was beyond appalled at the concept of women's sport for women. Today, we actually have more to celebrate, although we continue to have a huge battle. The British Triathlon supports women's sport for women, and it's establishing an open category for the rest. Great win. Maya Fostata won her 2nd case, this time for discrimination, and we celebrate that. In Australia, Roxy Tickle dropped his federal court case against Sal Grover and Giggle. And in the last couple of days, instigated by a complaint by Sal Grover about having to tick birthing parent instead of mother on her Medicare form, the Minister for Government Services, Bill Shorten, instructed Medicare to change the form back to mother. Yay! Well done, Sal. We'll have a drink to you at lunch afterwards. And well done, Bill Shorten. We should all be sending him messages of support because, believe me, he is copping a lot of shit from within his party right now. We're here today, and we're here, and it's nothing to do with gender identity. We don't care how people identify. It's their own business. What we're saying to the Queensland government is don't use identity to remove women's sex-based rights. We're a sex class, we're 50% of the population. Don't use any excuse to take our rights away. Women are not an identity. We're not interested in identity politics. You can't erase a sex class. We need to not place too much faith in the parliamentary submissions that we will be probably invited to make when the bill comes before Parliament and is sent to the parliamentary committee. We'll probably get the opportunity to put in a submission, and we'll all do it, and we'll do very good ones, and we've done it before when they put up the Born in the Wrong Body legislation. We put in submissions for the Queensland Women's Strategy. We put in very good submissions, but by the time it comes to submission stage, it is too late. We'll get some exemptions, perhaps, at submission stage, and we can argue very strongly for exemptions from this coming legislation. We can argue for exemptions in terms of prisons, domestic violence shelters, public toilets, and all the rest. But at that stage, we will only get some exemptions. The matter's serious, as we're all well aware, and the time to stop it is now. Visit not only your local MP, but any member of the Labor government, especially the Cabinet, who will meet with you. Take a friend. If you're in an electorate and you don't want to go on your own, ask one of us to come with you. We're all only too happy. Prepare for a 30-minute meeting. Have a small number of points to make and evidence those points. And leave the MP with an A4 page or less of the points that you've made and a couple of references. Make sure you ask the MP to do something for you. Ask them to get some data. Ask them to get back to you when they've read one of the articles that you're showing them, and tell them you'll get back to them if they don't get back to you. And above all, don't assume MPs are well informed on this issue or any of the ramifications. They are not. I know with 100% certainty that every woman here today knows far more than the average Queensland State MP about sex self-identification and what it means for us. I'd like to contrast how the government has dealt with an issue that actually advanced women's rights and how it's dealing with this issue that sets us back. 45 years ago, when I was in my mid-20s, I joined a women's group to win abortion rights. Our goals were to win decriminalisation of abortion and free access to abortion services via the public health system. This was at a time when abortion in Queensland was a crime. But women didn't stop having unwanted pregnancies just because we didn't have safe and legal abortion access. We still had unwanted pregnancies, and so we had to go to Sydney, many of us, to get safe abortions. When I went to Sydney for an abortion in the mid-70s, it was only the second time I'd been on a plane. Some women, just 10 years ahead of my time, died from unlawful botched abortions in Queensland. For the next 40 years, on and off, this was my main women's movement area of politics. I said 40 years, not 4, not 14, 40. Some of the women I met in the early days of the abortion rights campaign had died of old age by the time we won abortion decrim in 2018. They never saw that victory. I'd gone from my mid-20s to my mid-60s. Abortion rights was a struggle that actually advanced women's rights. Abortion is a basic sex-based right. For that 40 years, we met with politicians, we rallied and marched, we organised public meetings and private meetings, we wrote submissions, we publicised surveys that showed most people supported women's abortion rights, and the media covered the debate. And then we started all over again and did it again. The government ran at least 3 inquiries into that question over 40 years. They consulted with every person and their dog. They consulted with the churches, the unions, the lawyers, the doctors. They even consulted with women. Contrast all of that, which was certainly overkill, no one wants 40 years, with how the Queensland government has developed policy and is currently developing legislation to set back women's rights. So it's the opposite. It's happened and it's happening with no consultation, no inquiries, no media scrutiny. Women, the biggest losers, have been specifically excluded. Attorney General Shannon Fentiman takes her direction from the gender identity industry and doesn't think women need to be consulted. But we do. This is about our rights, our existence, our safety and privacy. We're not suggesting 40 years, but we're not suggesting the blink of an eye and the exclusion of women's voices is okay either. Thank you. Kaz will speak for Christina.